Hello, welcome to Revive and Rise. I'm your host, Melody Parrish. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. So, we're going to continue the discussion about manipulation, which is one of the themes for our podcast this month, in the month of May. And last week, we talked about manipulation and characteristics of manipulation and how to be able to recognize when manipulation is occurring. I know from experience that manipulation can happen to where you don't really fully understand that it's even occurring. We can be manipulated and not even know it, and that just adds to the pain, that adds to the toxicity of the situation. You know, it's very difficult. I feel like when you find out that you've been manipulated. And today I want to talk about what to do with that information when you find out that you've been manipulated, whether it's once, whether it's many times, whether it's over a few weeks, a few months, a few years, decades, whatever. When you find out and you really begin to understand what's been occurring and how it's affected you, you feel many different things. And I want to talk about what to do with those feelings and what to do with those ideas, those thoughts. I wanted to share with you some of the techniques, some of the things that have helped me personally. I wanted to maybe give you some ideas of things that could help. And so I want to dive in to those initial feelings. When I remember when it occurred to me that I was being manipulated, and I didn't really understand fully what exactly that entailed. I didn't really understand the depths that it was occurring, the length of the time that it had been occurring, and what effects that had on my life. And I'm still learning all of that. I feel like these self-discovery journeys and are just ongoing forever and ever. They never end as long as we're alive. And we're always discovering things about ourselves. We're always learning things about ourselves. And it's just putting the pieces together and learning how everything works together and taking that information and growing and becoming better humans. And so I remember when I first began to realize and notice that I was being manipulated in life. I had no idea it was going on. And even though it was right in front of me, even though I knew that this person manipulated others, emotionally abused others, I was under the impression that that would never happen to me, that I was different, because we were so close. And I was made to think that we were extremely close. I was made to think that that was what love was. I was made to think those things. And so, just from the idea of someone who loves you, you would never think that someone that loves you would manipulate you in such a way. And I was so surprised and so shocked when I discovered that it was occurring. And it was a gradual burn. It wasn't like a aha 1 minute realization. And I was in denial for so long because it hurt. It was so painful. Well, once I finally did accept that the manipulation was occurring, then it became, I became so filled with anger. I became filled with anger because at myself. Interestingly enough, I wasn't angry at the person for a very long time. I wouldn't let myself get angry with the person that that manipulated me. I just wouldn't, because that wasn't allowed, and it was ingrained in me that that wasn't allowed. So, but I could easily be angry at myself, and so I was. I was so angry because when I realized what was going on, and when I realized that that pattern that I had seen over and over and over again was occurring, only this time it was occurring towards me, I felt so ignorant. And because of that, I was so angry at myself. I was angry that I didn't see it before. I was angry that I had allowed this to happen to me. I was angry that I allowed this manipulation to affect so many different decisions that I had made in my life. And I was angry because I was filled with curiosity at the same time. Where would I have been? What would I have done if I had not allowed this manipulation to occur? And you know, I thought I was so ignorant. I thought, you know, because one of the definitions of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, I felt like I had done that. I felt like I kept falling for the same thing and being manipulated and being caught up in all of that emotional abuse. And the same thing was happening, but yet I was expecting something different to happen. So I was so angry at myself for so long about this. Not only that, but I often felt like there had to be something wrong with me that this could happen to me. First of all, why would someone want to be so manipulative to someone they cared about, to someone that they knew trusted them completely? And I just felt like, well, the problem wasn't them, it was me. Again, internalizing that that blame, internalizing that anger, internalizing it all towards me. And that was my thought process for a very, very long time. You know, what did I do? How could I have allowed this to happen? It was always me. I was always to blame. not the person that had manipulated me and abused me. Not that person. That person wasn't to blame for a long time. In my mind, I was to blame. I was disappointed with myself. I often wondered, how could I let this happen? It was even there was even that negative self-critic in my mind that came into play a lot. Oh, you can't do anything right. See, you let this happen. See, you let that happen. You can't really trust people. You can't really trust yourself. You can't really trust anybody. You can't depend on anything. You can't even be a good judge of characters or situations or anything. You're so ignorant. You'll just fall for everything, and you're so gullible. It was a constant critic in my mind that would also absorb that blame. That critic would also, belittle me and just lower my self-esteem so much. And this kept occurring for years. Even when I knew the manipulation was occurring, even when I knew that what was being said was not accurate because I had lived it, I was there, so I knew that didn't occur. I was still manipulated to believe that it was in some way. And that was really devastating for me. So I had all of these emotions that were just building up and piling up inside of me, and they were affecting every part of my life, every part of the way I thought about myself, every part of the way I thought about others, every decision that I made in life. I didn't even realize that this was happening. It had happened for years, and so it had become such a habit, and it was like second nature. I didn't even realize it was occurring or it was happening. And it was just a vicious cycle. I did end up eventually seeking therapy because I needed help. And I think that is the number one, the first thing, the most important thing that you have to do is that, you need to realize that, hey, I need help. I can't do this alone. I need someone to help me make sense of all of this. I did not seek help for this initially, but through a trusted therapist, I was able to understand and learn that it was occurring. And I was able to, we were able to work through a lot of it. And the therapist was able to help me understand what was occurring and understand how it was affecting me. And I think that if you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, or you think that maybe some types of emotional things are happening to you, you're experiencing different emotions or different thoughts, I feel like it's so important for us to acknowledge that life is hard. Life is so hard. And it's okay. We just need help. We can't do life alone. And it's very sad if we think we can. We're just fooling ourselves. We need each other. And we need to recognize that there are things that I can do that you can't. There are things that you can do that I can't. We need each other to help us through life and to get ourselves through life. So the best decision I ever made was to go to therapy. But once I did, me and my therapist, we worked through this. I was able to understand. They were able to break things down so that I could see things. Once I started noticing the patterns that were happening to me specifically, I was able then to be able to notice them, to be more aware of times when they would occur. And I could recognize things a lot better. That allowed me to be able to put up boundaries, to be able to protect myself. So there were lots of different things that were very good about me going to therapy and understanding these things. And it helped me to deal with, and I'm still very much dealing with all of these emotions, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment. And I'm still, and I probably always will, but at least I'm starting, at least I'm on the path. Another thing I had to do was that I had to grieve the loss of what I thought was going to be. I had to grieve the loss of that relationship. I had to grieve the loss of the life that I thought I was going to have. And when I'm talking about relationships and the life that you thought, I don't specifically mean romantic relationships here. I'm speaking of anything. It can be a parent, it can be a family member, it can be a friend, a coworker, an employee or an employer, sorry. But it can be any of these things, because all of these relationships, we have in our minds ideas of how the people within these relationships are going to add to our lives. And we have an idea of what our life will be like with this person in it somehow. So I had to grieve the loss of that whole idea, that whole identity. And that was hard. It was a shock. And I grieved that loss a lot. Even though I'm okay now with it, I've accepted that loss and I understand. It's still very, very painful. And I grieve that loss frequently. I grieve what could have been, what should have been. Because it was somebody that I really trusted, would always be there. It was someone that should have been safe. And so I do grieve that loss, that I don't have that. And within that grief, that's just another complexity to add to the whole situation, because, you know, grief has its own cycle, right? So that's just another complex issue to add to the mix. And here, I want to say here that I'm talking about complex manipulations, things that have been done for long periods of time, not just one specific instance where you got manipulated by someone and something. Those can be very painful too. Those one time occurrences can be just as painful and just as devastating. However, they're not always as complex to work through. So now that we've talked about what happens when you learn that the manipulation has occurred, let's talk about. I want to talk about what to do with it. So because I've already talked about how important counseling is and therapy, and I can't stress enough. I think that every person should have a counselor. Every person should have a therapist. We should make this just the normal thing, because we all need help. And these people are trained. These people are professionals at how to deal with our emotions, with everything that we would need to help us in life. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody, and you just need to talk to somebody who is far enough removed from the situation that they're not going to be biased. And they're going to give you a good, thorough review of the situation. Sometimes you need to just vent and get everything out. Sometimes you need to just talk out the plan that you have with someone who is a skilled professional. So for all those reasons, I think that every person walking on the earth needs to have a counselor or a therapist in some form or fashion. But I also want to talk about other things that I did to kind of help me to deal with the anger, to deal with the fear, to deal with the disappointment, and all of the negativity that came. I will say growth is hard. Emotional growth is so difficult. But at the same time, it's what makes life worth living. If we're not learning and we're not growing, then we're stagnant. And you don't want to be stagnant somewhere. You don't want to be caught up in the same thing, the same idea, the same cycle. You want to live, you want to experience things, you want to do things, have relationships, have experiences, live life. And so one thing I think, one thing I was able to really do, and I think one thing that that the COVID pandemic really taught me the importance of was the pause. And I began to learn how to pause and to stop and to breathe for a moment. I had never let myself really just be. I was constantly working, constantly doing something, constantly doing things, and I just didn't take that moment, that extra moment. When the pandemic happened, the whole world paused. But we were able to learn to take advantage of that in a way to learn things, and meditation teachings were offered a lot, and meditation practices. Deepak Chopra actually had all of his meditations free for a moment in time during the pandemic, and so I kind of took that and ran with it, and started teaching myself how to meditate, and learned how to meditate, how to take myself away from the situation that's occurring, and how to pause and reflect, and do all these things that I didn't really let myself before. And that, I feel like that is such an important tool to be able to do. And I had such a hard time sitting in quiet. My mind would just wander, and it became a teaching and a training thing that I would train my mind to stop wandering, and to just focus on the present and focus on the now. I started only being able to do like a 1 minute meditation. And then it became a 1 minute, 2 minutes, and gradually I grew. I started with guided meditations, and because I didn't know what to do and I didn't fully understand, and now it's graduated to just meditations, and I can meditate for long lengths of time, 20, 30, 40 minutes, if I want to, or an hour or so, if I do have that much time to do. And sometimes I make that time, because you have to make the time. That's why it's so important, even if it's just 1 minute, make that time. Make that 1 minute time, because it will definitely help you to be able to sit and understand yourself, and understand situations, and make things very apparent to you, and very you're able to see a lot more. I feel like that's a great thing to do. I began to read and study a lot from trusted authors, from trusted sources. I started reading Pema Chodron, and Glennon Doyle, Brene Brown. I started looking at neuroscientific research of the brain and how it functions. I started reading things from Malcolm Gladwell, from Dr. Bruce Perry, and learning how your brain functions, and learning what occurs in your mind, what occurs with your thoughts, and that really helped me. The reason I started doing that was because it really helped me to understand that sometimes our mind does things just because that's what our mind was made to do. It's a survival method that's programmed into our brains. And so that helped to alleviate a lot of the blame that I was putting on myself when I realized that, my brain is programmed this way. So it wasn't my fault that this was occurring. It wasn't my fault that I was thinking these things. This was the survival mode that's built into my brain. And that's why this was happening. It helped to alleviate a lot of the negative cognitions and the negative thoughts and ideas that I had about myself and about situations. And it helped alleviate that guilt because I was able to understand more things about the brain. I found that very helpful. Another one of the greatest things that I did, I think, was I found what refueled me. I found what I needed, I guess. And that's to be outside, to be in nature. I'm able to make more connections, and I'm able to think more deeply when I'm in nature. It just helps me to self-regulate. If I want to, if I'm feeling bad, or if I'm feeling some kind of negative emotions, I just need to go outside. I need to get the sunshine. I need to see the beauty of the earth. I need to be out in nature, just walking and just sitting and observing, or just doing something of that nature, but seeing all of the beauty around me. And I learned that. I knew that as a child. I loved to be outside when I could. But, life happens, and we don't always get to do the things that we know that we need. And somehow that got lost. So now I make a point to always get outside as much as I possibly can. And just to experience things, go to new parks, go to new places, go investigate. Oh, what's in this forest? I've never been to this park. I've never been to this part of the city, the state, the country, the world. I want to see, I want to learn, and that really helps me to self-regulate and to calm myself. It awakens my senses. So I'm speaking for myself, but it awakens my senses. It gets me out of the place that I'm locked in to, and it brings me to the present. Feeling the sun, the warmth of the sun on my skin, seeing the brightness of the sun during the day, or the darkness of the night, because I love night as well. Hearing the sounds of nature, the birds singing, the leaves under my feet as I walk, feeling the different things. It all awakens your senses and brings you back to reality and back to the present moment, which sometimes that's just where we need to be. Also, one last thing I'll leave you with, and this is coming from a workaholic, a recovering workaholic. I didn't let myself rest. I I felt like a lot of times that if I stopped working in some way, that I was being lazy or I was being unproductive. I was not being efficient. I was, you know, not, I was just not earning my place in this world. Um, I was not showing my worth. And that's so wrong and it's so detrimental to our health. We need to, as human beings, we need to be okay with just being. We need to be okay with, well, I didn't really do too much today. I took a long nap or, I just lazed around the house some or, but we just need to be okay with that. Brene Brown talks a lot about the importance of play and the importance of fun and the importance of curiosity. She talks of a lot of that within her research, and it's true. I'm definitely more productive if I don't constantly grind and get so exhausted and so tired but take breaks. And because of who I am, at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, throughout the day even, but mainly at the beginning and end, I will reflect to see to see what I've accomplished and what I've done with the time that I've had. And before, it was always, well, look, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. This is what you did not do. You may have done this, but you did not do that. This didn't get done. That didn't get done. What were you doing? What the hell were you doing all day? Would be what I thought before. Try harder, do better, more. But now I look at things and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't accomplish as much as I thought I should have, or I didn't accomplish as much as I planned on. But I did accomplish this, or I did get this done, so at least that's something. And sometimes I don't really I can't think of what I have done or what I have accomplished. But that's okay. And I've learned, and I'm still learning, that that's okay. And that actually what the world considers a non-productive moment is far more important than productive moments. We need to let our brain rest. We need to let our brains create and to think, and we need to just have that ability to be able to do that. And if we don't allow ourselves to do that, then we can't be more productive. We can't be rested and prepared. And from that, it just leads to understanding ourselves more. It leads to being able to make better decisions. If we're rested and we're not immediately in that chaos at the moment, if there's any way to remove ourselves from that, we're able to make better decisions. We're able to make more informed decisions. We're better able to analyze things. We're better able to produce things and be more productive. And so I hope that helps with sharing of things that have helped me, to understand myself and to be able to deal with situations once I learned that I had been manipulated for a long time. And once I really understood the emotional abuse that had occurred, and how to deal with that. And I hope that helps you. I hope you feel seen. I hope you feel heard. I hope you realize that you're not alone in this whole crazy thing we call life. And I hope that listening to my story and listening to the things that I've shared will help you decide that you need to do something very similar. So I want to thank you for listening. And just remember that you do not have to suffer alone. Whatever you're struggling with, you do not have to suffer alone.